Peace, family. 19 Keys here. Appreciate everybody who streamed the latest episode and who engaged in the conversation. Feeling good. I got about 1 minute to drink a couple more sips of this. But this has been a very, very heavy conversation for a lot of people. And of course, for a lot of reasons, right? This conversation is one that is needed to happen and to expand. So I want to address first the first layer of the conversation, right? People ask me, do I believe in therapy? No. But let me give you the caveat before you jump at me. It's not a belief in anything. If you have to believe in something, then it may or may not work. Do I know therapy? Right? It's different, right? Do I know what will work for me and what won't? So when something requires a belief, then that's when it becomes more of a religion and more of a cult, right? So when we're talking about like eating clean or like working out and like real processes and tools, I know these things will work for a fact. It doesn't require a belief, right? And the whole point of some of these things is that some of our tools in therapy do require belief. And that's not a bad thing because we have placebo effect, right? If we believe something to be, then our mind has the magical power to make it so. So what I believe, right, getting back to patterns and words, but what I know rather is that our community collectively has a survivor's mentality. Collectively, right? Collectively, we have a survivor's mentality. And so for me, the model is STE, survive, thrive, evolve, right? So yeah, you have to start from one place, one perspective, right? Which is your own and what I need to do in order to get through the day. And then once you get to a place of comfort, right, you can start thriving and then going beyond comfort and you start evolving. We don't push evolution enough. We push survival so much. We don't even push thriving enough. So what we're doing is we're expanding the conversation, and there needs to be dialogue and debate. And we actually need to focus on best methods and best practices. And yes, everyone is different, of course, right? There are so many different routes to healing. And the conversation of stop healing, start evolving, no one should be mad at that. It is a call to action that at some point in time, you're not healing, you're healed, right? And now you're evolving, you're past that, you're going into a new stage of development. We center so many things upon post PTSD, but we don't talk about how to turn that into growth. Right? We talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, but what about when that is turned into post-traumatic growth, which is what I've always had. I've been through so many different things, more than a lot of the average people on the planet, right? So I can speak on these things because I'm not somebody who has lived a safe life, right? And then this idea of being safe. In reality, I don't think America is safe at all, right? I don't think that America is a safe place for a black man, right? So for me to look for safe spaces means that I'm setting my nervous system up to always be nervous until I'm in this place that makes me feel that I can relax and I can breathe. And that is not the warrior's way. And we stopped teaching men how to move with the warrior's way. Right? And so that is not a conversation or a tough love conversation that we have. The militant mind, right, is not what's being pushed to the young men today. So what we're growing is a lot of soft boys and a lot of weak girls. So conversations need to evolve. Even when I say things that you say are triggering, social media is not a safe place. If you need people to say things that are not triggering, you need to close your phone. Now get it. Most of educated black women are going to get a lot of, not going to say most of, but a lot of educated women are going to get degrees in therapy and things of that nature. So we have a lot of black therapists, right? And so, my challenge, though, at the same time, because yes, I believe in healing. Yes, I believe in forms of therapy, right? And I think it's important to say forms of therapy because they're not all the same, right? You can go talk to one therapist that may be burnt out, and then it could destroy someone's relationship with that idea of therapy because we say it as one blanket statement. But what truly is therapy? If I tell somebody, go get therapy, what are you really telling me to go get? Well, what form of it are you telling me that is best, that I should try? So I think that we also need to be more specific in our language. Spin City is correct. MMA practice is therapy. Boxing is therapy. You know what I'm saying? Art is therapy. Working out is therapy. You know what I'm saying? Like, sparking conversations with strangers is therapy. Plant medicine is therapy, right? Church is therapy. So what form of therapy are you telling me? Because therapy is a spectrum. It's not one thing. Yet everybody's using one word as if we're all saying the same thing, but we actually mean completely different things because behind that may be a completely different knowledge set and or perspective. So I think that there needs to be more specific language and we figure out what are the better practices that we find working and getting results, and they should be based on the numbers. Then when the conversation of, I'm a black man, right? Black men, I promise you, looking for a safe space ain't it. Black women, I think that may be better for black women, right? But for black men, you want to increase, right? As my sister say, capacity. Increase your fluidity to be able to move throughout spaces and increase your preparation to be in those spaces. So the mental training, right? The physical training, the spiritual training. This is how we are prepared for the world that we are in. So think about it like this. Some of you all are, say you got to have a conversation in your relationship you don't want to have. How do you prepare for that? Or do you just avoid it all the way? Or do you wait for there's a safe time or a safe space to have that? Or do you try to create a safe space? See, that's when it gets nuanced. So my way of preparing for things like that is I study. Let me go learn about it. You know what I'm saying? Let me go read a book to understand so then I can engage. But I'm engaging more prepared because I'm not being led by my emotions. It's my emotional intelligence. So now I'm speaking from a place of reference and knowledge, right? Because I'm going in there with an expanded level of awareness. So now I have understanding, which is something that we do not talk about enough. Understanding is therapy. When you have an understanding is higher than wisdom in most religions and spiritual systems. But a lot of people just have information. And then I say, well, gaslighting is normal. Well, here's another thing. I know somebody gonna say, you're triggering me. I get it. Social media is triggering. That's the point of social media. Now, it has become this machine of how to grab somebody's attention by evoking an emotion, by poking at them. Otherwise, they keep scrolling. So when something challenges beliefs and ideas, you're triggered. But we also take this language and we turn ourselves into victims too fast. When a healthy mechanism might be to laugh. Oh, I know what they're doing. But how would you know what somebody is doing? It's because that's where your emotional intelligence kick in. That's where your intellect kick in. And instead of leading with your emotions, you process it and you understand nuance and context. And this is one thing that we've gotten away from. Instead of making people take ownership in the fact that, shout out to Raquel in the building, that they need to understand context and nuance of things and have critical thinking skills. Because critical thinking can save you so much. Don't you know that critical thinking can save your life? Here you are, right? Turning yourself into a victim. I'm being gaslit. They triggering me. Well, what do you think marketing is? What do you think politics is? And I can tell you one thing. Everybody loves therapy, but I've never heard therapy language in defense of black men. So it's an interesting thing because there's a lot of things that society claims to believe, but they don't practice when it comes to black men. We don't practice this idea about, we shouldn't have this conversation in public because this is not a safe space for black men. We should be careful what we say in case we trigger black men. We don't want to minimize the feel. We don't have that language. We don't have that language around black men whatsoever. Right? And matter of fact, when black men say that we're triggered by something, right, you get called soft. You get called weak. Right? Then you reverse it and say, well, no, y'all the ones who do this and do that and do that. And it's like, if you really believe it, then you have to believe in it for all. Not just yourself, not just women, not just gays, not just trans. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to believe in it for everybody, right? But I'm sure most black men would agree that this is our relationship with the world. The world doesn't want us to trigger them, but they don't mind triggering us. That's the relationship that black men have with the world. With the world. So a lot of these therapy languages have been weaponized against us, but it hasn't been used for us. That's just a fact of life. And there's so many examples of it. Gays will tell you, don't trigger us, but they don't mind triggering you. I made the post about Doechii yesterday. And she said the heterosexual man on her red flag. And it was like, okay. Now, can black men be triggered and respond to that? Or are we being insensitive? Can heterosexuals be triggered and respond to that? Or are you being insensitive? Because then on that same post, almost every gay person was like, they stand her for doing it. Well, then that goes into the standpoint of saying, well, if you can do it, then I can do it. Because if it's safe for one person, then it's safe for all. You can't be the oppressor and the victim at the same time. So this is where a lot of people don't think black men have the capacity to intellectualize these things and think about them, but we do. We just often don't explain all of these things, and we might turn it into anger, and you might want to try and trigger black men to manipulate them and say, that's red pill. No, it's not. It's my logic. Matter of fact, they will tell you mansplaining is an issue. Well, I'm a man and I explain things, and Well, damn. What part of therapy told you to be empathetic to how men think? I just want to call out the number one, some of the hypocritical things that exist in society that those who claim to want empathy do not give it. Because they will say, well, you are the oppressor. Damn, am I? If I was a person that believed in triggers in the sense that a lot of people tell me I should, or safe spaces in that idea. Now, I do understand the idea of a safe space. Don't get me wrong. I understand it completely, right? So this is where critical thinking comes in. One would say, I know he understands the idea. We're expanding and challenging the idea to expand. That's what we're doing, right? It's like I went and spoke at a therapy. It's called The Therapy. My brother, Mr. Fab, throws it in Oakland. Now, when men speak, men need a space to speak because the rest of the world, right, will feel triggered when we speak to each other like warriors and men straight up. And the whole idea is that we shouldn't need a space because we should just take up the space. Otherwise, we will never feel safe and we will feel compartmentalized and regulated to small rooms. That means that makes you feel less like a man when you need spaces to feel safe. You have to understand that. I've seen grown men cry in these spaces because they don't want to need the space in the first place. And my thing is to tell them, yeah, you have to go out and challenge the world. And the space exists for you. You just don't have the tools to take it up and turn every space into safety for you. But in the sense that don't look for the safety, be the safety. Don't look for, and this is where a lot of women and men are doing to their young children today. A lot of people are doing this to their children is that they're so over focused on protecting them. You're making these young boys so weak that they grow up into weak men who need space just to think. We're warriors, gods, kings, aren't we? When did we become relegated to spaces? But yes, again, I understand the idea of a safe space, being around people who are in agreement with you, right? Who are nice to you, who are going to do the niceties. They might not tell you what they really think. So is it really safe? Because truthfully, I might need somebody to challenge my points. People don't care about a safe space for 19 keys. They're going to say, you're dangerous. Your opinion's not right. You're wrong. What are you doing? They will comment under posts. They will tell other people not to follow me. But damn, you trying to make it unsafe for me out here. I'm on my page, doing my life, doing my thing. I thought it was a safe space for me. My bad. God damn. But see, I also realized that I have tools that most people don't. And this is why intelligence and intellect is a sign of masculinity. Right? Emotional intelligence is a sign of masculinity because then men have the capacity to deal with things. We seek challenge. We don't seek comfort. You want to be comforted? Oh no, I'm not doing that for you, brother. Not in that sense. Not in the way. Not that way. We are at war right now. I don't know if y'all know this. I don't I don't know if you all understand, but there's a war going on. There's a war, they call it dark matter or dark enlightenment and all these different things. There's a war of ideas. America's not a safe space. Get prepared. America's not a safe space. Get prepared. You know who I think created one of the greater cultures is the Japanese, where a warrior understands peace and war. We have too many men that understand peace, but not understand war. And there should be no peace where there is no liberty. So why are we seeking peace when we're not free? So when we're talking about therapy, you don't want to overdiagnose yourself to make everything a problem in the first place. Some things are gifts. Diversity is a gift. But the way you turn them into gifts is that they become lessons and you'll become a perpetual life learner. And you're always looking for the lesson in it. And you take extreme ownership over your own life to where nothing is happening to you. It's happening because of you. Man, and it's become so powerful. But I understand there's so many great, beautiful light workers in our community. And they are the ones that are like angels to the community, the people that have the passion to create these spaces, the people that have the passion to do this work, that's working with victims of sexual trauma and people who've been child trafficked and, all sort of different things from abuse to domestic violence. Man, the goal is not to trivialize their work. It's actually quite the opposite. Is that everybody should not be grouping themselves, right, in the same category of people who really have real things innately in their body, right, in their brain, in their mind. You shouldn't be in the same category when yours might just require a mindset shift. That's different. People who have real mental illnesses, bipolarism and schizophrenia, those are people who need real, not just therapy. Like they have something that they may not be able to cure as easy. They have things that have to deal with their brain, their body, their spirit, their mind. It requires something completely different. They might have to be on some sort of drug to be diagnosed. That's different. And we're not making enough room for those people because everybody is overdiagnosing themselves. And it is a spectrum. When you really, when you can go on, so think about this for a second. When you can go on social media and watch a video for an hour and get a perspective shift, and then you no longer feel like you have a problem, you never had a problem. It was just learning. There's people that tell me, I had a sister walk up to me at one of my shows. And she said that I helped prevent her 19 or 21-year-old daughter from suicide. I get people that do that all the time, that they was going to commit suicide or depression, and it was going through a whole lot. And just by watching the video, it reinvigorated their life. They needed some motivation, some inspiration. They needed a perspective shift. That's not a mental illness. That's just learning. That's a change of environment. That's exposure. That's expanding. So we don't appreciate how powerful true knowledge is, right? That expands our capacity to understand ourselves and the world. But then there are some things that are like deep within our bodies that we have to cleanse out. So there is a perspective and there is a spectrum to what therapy is, but to say, go get therapy. How do you know that's the right one for me to go sit with a therapist and talk? In the U.S., we don't prescribe nature enough as therapy. We're not prescribing nature. In Japanese, it was shown that yoku shinrin, or forest bathing, right? It's prescribed to where essentially you go into the forest for like 3 days, and this brings down your anxiety and all sort of different things. They change up things in society in order for people to grow. But we start, look at my brother Nero, he understands the naming of entities and giving them power over us. And then they become things that you have to fight because it's things that you now believe in. Hiking groups. Go hike. You know what I'm saying? Go meditate. How about some of you all, you don't have nothing, you ain't depressed, you just eat bad foods. And if you have low mental energy, then you don't have the energy to think, you don't have the capacity to deal with higher order thinking and critical thinking skills. So yes, everything's going to trigger you because you're eating the wrong foods. Then we take wholesale white psychology, and you got the nerve to tell me that I'm wrong, but we're not studying from black psychology enough, and we don't speak about it enough. We don't want to be divisive. No, black therapists, I love the black therapists that be like, no, I teach from the black psychology because it's completely different minds. We're not the same people. We're not. So yes, I love those who take the holistic remedies and teaching our people. I just don't want it. And sometimes therapy is a cult. Let's just be honest. I might say that in a way so where I want to challenge your mind. But therapy sometimes is a cult. That's why people join cults. Sometimes people join things because they're going through a dark night of the soul. Some mass interruption. It could have been a heartbreak. It could have been a divorce. They could have lost a loved one. And it shatters all their beliefs about what their future life was going to be. And they have to start over. And they don't know who they are without this thing. And so they go through what's considered to be a dark night of the soul. This can last months. It can last years for some people. Then they start trauma bonding. Start trauma bonding. Some of you are, some ladies, man broke your heart. Now you're in a relationship with a girl because y'all both got your heart broke. Then y'all start trauma bonding. You know what I'm saying? Then y'all start lesbo bonding. I know I ain't supposed to say stuff like that, but it's real. And then now your relationships and the connection you have with the people around you is because y'all got trauma. And then one person might not want to tell the next person, actually, I'm kind of healed from that. I'm kind of over that now. But the only real thing y'all got in common is these dark issues. And it's okay to heal and let people know I've evolved past that. It's okay. It's okay to let people know, listen, I ain't gonna lie, you keep complaining, man. I'm past that. Listen, sis, you still complaining about that old thing. I've actually healed. I've healed from talking about these type of things as well. Because sometimes you can make too much space for people and then they can live there because they're comfortable there now. And they actually get stimulated by having this space versus being stimulated by growth. So there is way too much trauma bonding going on in our communities. No, let's bond by the fact that we're healed and we're growing. And let's set markers and put a period sometimes on the healed conversation. Yeah, I don't want to continue to know someone and we talking about how we, been through a trauma and we've been knowing each other for years and that's the depth of our relationship and now we hate everybody else that don't use our language and don't walk around us and don't over regard our feelings and don't care whether we're in a safe space and we're not being triggered. It's been years. You've turned this into an identity. You turned it into a personality trait, as my sister talks about. So it's not a bad thing when your beliefs and your ideas are challenged. And that's where the therapist sometimes, I was talking to a principal yesterday, is that the teachers, right? Because that's what some therapists are at the same time. It's like, so do two parts of that conversation. You have teachers who don't continue to learn. If you think about a teacher in a high school, you think about a professor, right? A professor is constantly learning. Sometimes they publish in papers, right? They're working on different dissertations, things of that nature. They're still increasing their intellectual capacity. But a lot of these teachers, they just posting pictures, twerking and dropping pictures of new shoes that they just got. They're not continuing to grow intellectually. And it's similar to the same with therapists. Do you have the capacity to deal with people or are you in survival mode? Because when healers are in survival mode, they're not the best healers. You ever look at some of them Indian sage monks and things of that nature? Well, they be speaking so slow. The mind cannot be sick unless the mind believes in sickness. In silence, there is no sickness. When you sit with a thought, you are automatically healed. Them gurus don't be in survival mode. They be so relaxed. You know what I mean? They be so relaxed. They got all the time in the world too. I mean, no rush to talk or nothing. Just so relaxed. And that's where you also realize that, yeah, some of the rich people that propagate therapy, they're not getting your therapist. So that's why you should focus on, yes, you can do talk, you can do walk, you can do train, you can do spirit. There's so many different ways you can do it. But you should focus on holistic because most likely you can't afford the truly gifted therapist a lot of times. Right? And they become like, you have the what's the word that I'm looking for? The public defender. It's like a public defender. You know what I'm saying? A public defender is not the same as being able to hire, right, an attorney that specializes in the law and wins cases. Because these public defenders be burnt out, a lot of them. They're not getting paid that much, so they in survival mode. The teacher's in survival mode, the therapist's in survival mode, the public defender's in survival mode, yet they supposed to help you survive. How somebody underwater gonna help you from drowning? So this is where, yes, you might get a actress and a very rich person saying, go to therapy. Can I get your therapist? Can I get your therapist? Oh no, your therapist is what, $100 an hour? $1,000 an hour? It's a little different. I watched this show called Billions And they got this therapist on there called Wendy. Oh, she like a specialist. She put people back together. I said, damn. If they was all like her, I have her around 24/7. But again, it's not all the same. So this is why I want people to take control of their journey when you say it, and you have to realize that, okay, maybe you're going to get the dollar store version. So you have to use the therapy as a tool. Don't let it use you. That's why most of it is going to have to be in your mind, and you're going to have to be there. And I'm sure the therapists are well-meaning and good, and they probably give you the tools and things of that nature. And a lot of people probably just don't follow them and stuff like that. And, bless the heart of the therapist, because they probably try as much as they possibly can and do very good things and save all kind of lives. Right? It's very true. But it's not all the same. It's not all the same. So now people are triggered by the word cult. Well, a cult is a term often applied to new religious movements and other social groups which have unusual and often extreme religious, spiritual, or philosophical beliefs and rituals. Extreme devotion to a particular person, object, or goal is another characteristic. So sometimes people turn their therapy community into a cult. I wouldn't even say it's a necessary, bad thing per se. Cult, that's the root word of culture. But I think that we need to be careful and think critically to say, damn, am I stuck in this routine of practices, right, and rituals to try to heal? Or do I want to do the work and grow through it and then move from it? Because what ended up happening is sometimes the community itself or the practice of going to therapy replaces the actual healing, because you just get the comfort of being there versus doing the work so you can be away from there. It becomes just a part of your routine, becomes a part of your life, right? You tell people, oh man, I'll go to therapy, right? It becomes a part of your identifier of who you are. So therefore, you're not trying to get out of therapy. No, because now you are now part of social groups, and you use this as one of your virtue signals sometimes. Not everybody, of course. I'm definitely not speaking to everybody. There's a lot of people who need it. Right? So this is why it is important to say. And this is why some therapists can give other therapists a bad rap, because some therapists may be dependent on clients to be dependent on them. So that's why you have to go in there, right, with a tool to learn so that you're not constantly repeating. So you're moving forward on things. You shouldn't be going in there talking about your childhood for 5 years. When you think about outside of Western practices, the therapy is different. Because you also realize the spiritual aspect is holistically missing, because a lot of people go to get a Western education to become therapists, so they don't add in the spiritual components. Even though we're very spiritual people. So we're trying to over-rationalize everything from a mental understanding, but there may be spiritual components. And a more divine conversation that should be had. And that is not something that we are adding enough, because we've become little groups of Freud and psychology, right? Trying to diagnose the spirit of the melanated person. See, the warrior, he's spiritual. You know, years ago, they thought that meditation was pseudoscience. They've only recently validated, right, meditation. Think about that. This is a recent validation of meditation. They didn't. So when you go to a lot of these schools, the therapists early, they wasn't telling people to go meditate because it was considered pseudo. So those therapists who have more of a holistic approach, who add in the spiritual component, right? Those are the ones that are usually the best. But then also those who got a different level of education, passion, or some of them are just savants at it. Intuitive guides. You know, there's different gifts that different healers have. Then there's shamanistic healing, which is found deeply in African societies and other South American societies, where the shaman would take you through different dimensions. But people out here smoking so much weed, going to therapy every single day. That weed ain't guiding you. The weed is just suppressing. And that's how people are using their tools as suppressions. Let me ask you this. How many people go to therapy? Because there is all of your therapists should be telling you to stop self-medicating. But the therapist is smoking. The therapist is drinking. The therapist is eating bad. Come on now, we ain't even talking about chi and some of that Qigong. You know what I'm talking about? Like Eastern medicine hasn't perfected some practices in the movement of energy and body systems and bandhas over the body. You know, they considered chiropractic pseudoscience for the longest. So it's very important to have an understanding of science yourself if you're going to see a therapist. And now we have AI where you can start researching. It's like when I had a case and I go to my lawyer and I started researching law for myself, and I'm like, yo, why don't we try this in court? And you realize that every lawyer can only obtain so much information about the law at one given time, specifically to the given case that they're dealing with. So it's the same thing with therapists. They're not, all of them are not studying psychology day and night. Some of them are taking the tools that they have and generalizing it over a group of people that come in based on different cognitive therapy, skills that they have. So when you go in there, and I ain't saying don't act like you a specialist. I'm saying study in the sense to where you becoming more aware. Study things outside the paradigm. Right? Yeah, even Reiki was considered pseudo, and they recently started validating Reiki in science. So when somebody tells me they got ADHD, and it was like, man, you being dismissive. I said, no, I'm not. Maybe I got it. But the difference is I actually studied it. So without having awareness of it, how can you ever heal? So I believe that should be a part of the practice of the patient, that you actually study these things that people diagnose you with. You study the root. You study the father that these things come from. They empower you to have a different level of understanding. Yeah, there's a lot of energy systems, man. And here's the thing. I have a conversation with a black scientist, female scientist, right? And we was talking about how science, and it's funny you say black science. We say, what's black science? Well, I'm talking about the things that are particularly of our interest. Because you also realize that a lot of these studies, they're funded. And so unless they're funded, then there's certain research that don't get out there. And so then there's certain therapies that therapists won't use. But then who are the ones funding the studies? And so we're not funding enough studies, right? So that therapists have a different set of tools to use, specifically holistic and spiritual science. Because if something is wrong with the brain, you know, and that's one thing I like about this doctor that studies the brain. He say therapists are the, what did he say, therapists, or did he say psychologists? Are the one doctors that don't look at the, that's what he said. He said they're the one doctors that don't look at the organ that they're actually treating. So when you go to therapy, you're not going to get a brain scan, are you? How many of y'all got a brain scan when you went to your therapist? If you're a neuroscientist, man, go ahead, send me, if you were a scientist, a therapist, send me a DM, send me what you got going on. I want to know. How many people are going to get a brain scan when they go to their therapist? No, we're not doing that, right? So this doctor realized that perhaps it's not just a mental thing. Maybe it's actually a physical thing, right? Because stress can warp the brain, right? This is true. And so when the stress warps the brain, right, sometimes it can cause inflammation. Bad eating can cause inflammation and things of that nature in the brain. And then it means something, trauma can exist in the brain, right? And then that means the brain needs to be treated itself. So then if you go get brain scans, and I believe that we should have the ability in the hood to go get brain scans all throughout America. And then we go look at the pictures of these brains, and then you're going to say, oh, there's a little lump of trauma here, right? There's inflammation here. Then you're able to get a diagnosis, and then you're able to get the tools and the routines and whatever is necessary in order for you to heal that. This is what this doctor did. I'm just telling you his actual studies of thousands of patients. And you realize that, damn, sometimes it's actually a physical condition with the brain and not just a mental thing. So they can be trying to cope for years on something that if they would have focused on actually healing the brain from a physical standpoint. So this is why all of these things are important. All these things are important. I mean, look at us. We have an obese society. That means that 50+% of our society is obese. That means 50+% of our society is sick. And we're not even talking about that enough. You say a smell can trigger a traumatic event. I mean, listen, man. I think we have to be careful about saying things like that. I think you have to realize that you're talking about people with severe cases. See, this is what I mean. You talking about people with severe cases. Ain't no smell triggering no traumatic event for me, man. That's where the resilience and the capacity to deal with things. You talking about severe cases, and we have to stop using when we talking about severe diagnoses on the average person, because then, it becomes like a placebo effect. To where people validate it, and then they say, "Oh, I smell something," and I start tripping. So I think we have to be careful. Some of these languages are for the severe, right? And not the average. Rising 224. My sister, you say the conscious fake leaders are weird, bro. You conscious fake leaders are weird. Well, first of all, I thank you for listening, and I acknowledge that you have some issues going on, but this is not a safe space for disrespect. So this is the whole thing about people, is that they feel like they can disrespect you, but they don't deserve to be disrespected. Now, I don't have the energy this morning to disrespect a young black woman. I don't know what you got going on in your life, and I hope that you work through those problems so that you no longer have them anymore, right? And I hope that you have the wisdom to listen to people who may know more than you and can expand your capacity to grow in life. You say I'm calling women fat. There's plenty of fat women. Am I missing something here in society? First of all, I didn't just say women. I said 50% of America is fat. You took it personal. That's the traumatic smell, is the food smell in America. Yeah, it's triggering people to overeat. You got to start walking by these certain restaurants. I said 50% of America is obese. She said you can call the women fat. This is madness. This is why I'm gonna tell you, I do believe in therapy, because I think people that are overweight need therapy. And that therapy is the gym. And then you have to deal with the problems that make you go to the gym, which are self-esteem and insecurities and things of that nature. And maybe some childhood traumas and things of that nature that's going on. I don't know. There's so many issues with America. We got too many mental issues in America. Goddamn. I can't quote a stat now. There's too many. The word, and it's a thing. We can't use the word fat no more. Why? Is it going to make people more fat if I use it, or less fat if I use it? I'm trying to understand some things here. Right? Yeah, maybe we all need some therapy in some form. All right? So I would love to see more of us meditating. I would love to see more of us doing some form of therapy, right? There's nothing wrong with it. And we have to stop being afraid of being triggered. Somebody can say therapy is a cult. It doesn't make it a fact. It doesn't mean that your perspective is invalidated. The tools you use don't work. And this is the difference between believing in things and knowing things. Somebody can say something about something that I know, and it won't change my position because I'm confident in what I believe. You should be able to be challenged, and it either grows you, right, or it does nothing, because you know yourself so deeply. But that is the point as well, is that there's so much going on social media that things can pull you in this direction and that. Oh, this today I believed in this, but this person said this, and the next day I believe in this. Stand firm in what you believe if that's the case. Then you got all these young people who think that they got all these issues with them. Body dysmorphia, body positivity, all of these different things. New things popping up every single day. Then they get in circles of depression circles. Now they don't know how to deal with life. Now even the threshold for bullying has come down. And then they start seeing themselves as weak instead of having the capacity to deal with life. So there are plenty of therapy codes. But no, the word therapy is a code in the sense that go to therapy. Okay, which kind? Which one? Who? How much? For how long? So I think that language does matter, right? And I think that we should be more intentional about what we tell people, right? So you saying I can't call you fat, but you can keep coming in my comments. See, that's what you sisters mean. Some of y'all got some real problems. Some of y'all got some real problems. Got some real problems. So I ain't even gonna talk bad about you because I don't know your life. You know what I'm saying? I don't know your life. I don't know your life. That's somebody's daughter. So yeah, in short, no, I don't think when people go to therapy, they're joining a cult. Yes, I do believe that black men need to participate in various forms of therapy. And I believe it should be said like that. Various forms of therapy. I think what's the issue to me is the singular term, go therapy. That's what I'm getting towards. Black women should go and have multiple forms of therapy. Right? So think about it from that perspective. And I think it's a much better perspective. And I realize that a lot of people don't listen to long form. That's not my fault. I'm not responsible for people running off clickbait. I'm not responsible for people being triggered. I'm not responsible for people not actually listening. That is a lower form and a lower tier of society. That's their responsibility to take ownership over their life and have critical thinking. Let me get Rising on up out of here. I think she definitely got some issues. I hope your therapist can work with you on those things, sister. But yeah, so have multiple forms of therapy. That is my diagnosis. Now, she's not even really a good troll, but... And some of us don't need this idea of therapy. You just need a better social circle. You just need better friends. Sometimes that's what you need. You know what I'm saying? If we being honest, like if you go back to ancient practices, sometimes they would, and this is something that we did and we're going to be bringing back in a high level club. So if y'all want to join doing the hikes, right? We're going to be doing the hikes all around America. You understand me? Going to different cities, especially as those groups reach to like 50 to 100 people, and bonfires. So I will drop the video where we did the bonfire. We did the bonfire, and essentially we had like people write down, a goal or issue that they was dealing with, right? And they would throw it in the fire. Then we had a discussion, right, over the fire. Fire is a very purifying element. You understand me? And it was more, I would say, spiritual than anything, because you got to think about it. That's how they used to do back in the day. Like, even you think about the Native Americans. They may have smoked some peyote or something. You feel me? Had the tobacco going, and they sat around the fire and they shared stories. You understand me? They shared stories. So, yeah, we going to be doing, especially now that it's back warmer. We're gonna be bringing back the hikes. We did some we did it in L.A. and Atlanta, so we're gonna be doing some more of those, and we're gonna be doing the bonfire. I just like the idea of bonding over fire myself. I think it's such a powerful element. You understand me? So make sure that we tap into that. Enjoy your different forms of therapy, right? Your holistic forms of therapy. You understand me? But I think let's be more intentional when we tell people to go to therapy, right? Because I think that's an easy way to pawn people off without having to be intentional. And then there's no such thing as therapy as a healer. There's therapies, meaning it's a lifestyle, right? So it's the working out, it's the eating right? It's the good social life. You know what I'm saying? It's the detoxing digitally from the world, right? It is the spiritual fasting, right? It is, being in spiritual conversations with others, whether that's mosques or church or study groups. You feel me? And then there's reflection time and silence, right? There's so many different therapies that it becomes a lifestyle that is consistently increasing your resilience and your capacity throughout life to grow with things, right? And continue to become stronger and stronger and stronger. So what bothered you yesterday has no power over you today. And tune in to High Level Conversations. I believe it's a great conversation. I suggest you all go follow Ray Kill's page because I think she's one that challenges thought. And if you listen to the sister, there was a conversation we had before we got into it where she was telling us about her life, and how she got to where she is. And it was very important. Because yes, she does has a tough love, more of a masculine approach to it, right? Which I think these things are necessary because sometimes you tell a person they have the capacity to deal with something that can be more healing, right? Than telling them that they have an issue that it might take a very long time to get over. So I like timelines for growth, right? And I believe that overall, the message should be survive, thrive, evolve. But too much of the message is in survival and not enough is in evolution. Peace, family.